Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast based on writers sitting around drinking coffee or wine or tea, talking about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Your hosts today are John Schmidt and me, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 31, The Romance of Romance Writing. We have Violet Woods in the studio with us today on the coffee couch. Welcome, Violet.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Violet is a longtime friend of John's from different organizations we all belong to in that medieval recreation group sort of way.
But she's a Gilbert and Sullivan fan, and if I want to go to good theater, I always think of going In with the Woods.
Oh,
I know, horrible puns.
That's sort of Sondheim of you, and I respect that. So, Violet, I've been out to your webpage and looked around. Tell us, romance writing. Do you love romance? Where did you decide you were going to write romance novels?
Oh my gosh. That was actually a childhood decision. That's one of those things that you stubbornly declare when you're about 3, and it just kind of sticks. It just took me about another 40 years to actually get around to doing it. But I always knew I was going to.
That's beautiful. I was going to be a ballerina, and that didn't take. John, what were you doing at 3?
I think I was going to be a fireman, but at 3, I probably was just going to stick forks in electrical sockets, according to my mother. No, wait. Probable is not a word that she used. Stupidly was the word she used. But the question I have is not when did you decide to be a romance writer, but how did you get good at writing erotic scenes?
Well, gosh, practice makes perfect, I think, is the idiom to fall back on.
Go you.
Ooh, baby.
Practice writing. What did you think I meant? Good heavens. PG-13. PG-13.
We don't say things, but we have a deep interest in the moister subjects, and our desire throbs with interest.
Did you say moister? Excuse me.
No, I'm the one who has to beg for excuses.
Well, it's the microphone gets me excited. It is the world's prettiest microphone, after all.
It certainly is. It's very attractive.
So you decided you were going to be a romance writer. Is it that you enjoyed reading romance novels in particular?
I did. In fact, one of the first novels I remember reading was a Barbara Cartland called No Heart is Free. I was 2.5. I got in huge amounts of trouble.
Why trouble?
I think my mother decided it was inappropriate for me to be reading it at that young an age. I didn't understand it. I had no idea what was going on. But it was interesting, and it was something to read, and I was in the back of the car, and it was on the floor, and there was nothing else to do, and we were on a long road trip. So I read it.
I think I've sometimes thought the appeal of romance to women is the interrelationship of humans in one way or another. Is that what drew you to it? I mean, there's just so much more about the human interaction relationship development, far more than, science fiction, which is more about the development of worlds or inner space or travel. So is that what you...
Well, all good stories are stories about people. And I forget who actually said that first, so I'm not going to take credit for it.
We'll look it up.
Yeah, it was probably Heinlein or one of those guys. But really, romance speaks so much more to the inner life, to the thought process, especially of women. And you don't really get a lot of representation of that in, say, mystery fiction or anything like that. I feel that romance is a great place to express how women interact with the world, how women interact with themselves, and how they feel about things. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to explore the inner self, I think, is a good way to put it.
It is. Do you find yourself following, I mean, I once was in a bookstore and I saw it was the Absolute Beginners. It was what's the white and yellow and black books on how to do things?
For dummies.
For dummies. I saw romance novels for dummies.
Oh, dear.
And I opened it up because I thought, well, I want to write. I write anything. Mm-hmm. And it talked about, this is your formula. Do you find that did you find your formula without looking up a formula, or did you just come upon it?
I don't have a formula. I am a total and complete pantser. A term we all steal from NaNoWriMo, of course, which is, to me, that's kind of how I got to where I am at the moment.
Was that your first? Is that where you did your first book,
Oh, yes.
NaNoWriMo? Tell us about it.
Well, I've started probably 200, 300, maybe 1,000 books in my life.
Okay.
Usually it's, a couple paragraphs and then I forget about it. I have started so many books. I never actually finished a book until NaNoWriMo happened. And it happened to be a friend who was doing it for personal, she wasn't trying to publish. It was just personal enrichment, personal satisfaction for her. And she got me into it, and that was about 10 years ago. And the very first time I did it, I actually finished about, 4 hours before the deadline.
And you said to yourself, wow, 50,000?
I cried. I actually wept because I'd finished
Yay.
a book. It was the first time I'd gotten that experience, and I was completely verklempt. I was just, I was a wreck for like a day and a half. It was.
That's glorious. Well, then you have to go tell everybody, I have finished a novel.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even have an idea of how many thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across America would say to themselves, I'm writing a novel, and yet never actually finish a novel.
Oh, yeah. And that absolutely was me until about 10 years ago, and NaNoWriMo happened for me. And
Awesome.
Wow.
So deadlines are a magic secret for you.
Oh, gosh. I am the quintessential English student who started every single paper the day before it was due. I think even my baccalaureate thesis, I started like a couple weeks before it was actually due. And this was, your 100-page, So deadlines definitely do work and help.
I like deadlines. Do you self-publish entirely, or have you gone for an agent yet? Or?
I do not self-publish. I have a day job already. I do not have the time, the energy, the dedication that is required to self-publish. I wish I did, but I do not yet have an agent either. I've only worked through one publisher so far. I've sold all my books through Siren Bookstrand.
Oh, I know of them.
Yes, which is not, as I discovered and several other of my fellow Siren authors recently discovered, is not the Siren publishing that's on LinkedIn.
Oh.
Because they contacted quite a few of us and said, excuse me.
I see. Is it a case of mistaken identity, or just somebody didn't look the name up, or?
Hard to say, but Siren Bookstrand does not appear to be on LinkedIn, so now we know.
Okay.
Useful information. But yeah, I sold them the very first thing I put out in the world and said, would you like to buy this? And they did, which was also very exciting.
Cool.
I have only recently joined the ranks of the true author brotherhood. I finally received my first rejection letter. I'm very excited.
Wait a second. You've published without receiving rejection letters?
This is my first one. It's
Yay!
Can I hate her just a little?
A little.
A little.
Well, it's really doing wonders for my. Oh gosh, I forgot the term. When you feel imposter syndrome, it's doing wonders for my imposter syndrome, because now I've actually gotten a rejection letter. So now I'm a real author.
That is true. I'm planning on doing a bathroom in them one day. Some hidden down in a basement bathroom, papered with all of the people that have written me lovely personal rejections. So are you trying for a bigger label then, or an agent, or what are you looking to do?
At this point, what I'm trying to do most is get off my butt and write more.
That's a noble, beautiful thing.
That's a great thing.
Yeah.
Are yours, tell us about the romance. I mean, there's such a wide variety of it. Do you do history romance?
Smut. I do smut.
Okay. Now, smut, when we come... Sorry, I'm a naturalist in some things. A naturalist, I say, and smut to me means something much like a fungus. It's a black thing that grows in the margins of the leaves of the plants in my garden. What do you mean by smut?
I write erotic romance.
Yes. Is it contemporary erotic romance?
Does it involve shifters?
Okay.
No.
There's no shifters, no magic?
I have not yet published any of my paranormal works.
Okay.
None of them are finished enough to send out to the world.
But you've got paranormal works.
I have paranormal
And I've
works.
just completely outed myself as to what I would be interested in. Thank you, Gail Carringer.
Oh, I love her. Oh, her stuff is amazing.
I like the Zoe Chant books myself these days, so introductions. But the things I love about the different kinds of smut, let's just say smut, wherever they are in the different way, they take you to different places and they help you imagine different things. And for me, I definitely prefer the touch of fantasy. Plus, let's face it, it also opens the opportunity to join SIFWA and not just RWA. Are you an RWA person?
Oh, Lord.
I know this is a terrible time of year to bring all that up with the great explosion of Romance Writers of America. But she's going to roll in the corner laughing for an hour, I can tell.
Yes, I currently do have an RWA membership, and it comes up for renewal in July, and I am searching my soul as to what I'm going to do with it when that happens.
There's time.
You have time to see whether they keep throwing fuel into the dumpster fire or they actually put it out and get their...
I saw Mary Robinette, who's leading the SIFWA, had reached out and said, hey, we love romance and smut in a fantasy and sciencey way. And I tried to say, it's like, wow, for all the romance novels that spoke most to me of my, let's say, the youth when I used to believe in them, it was the man who instantly knew exactly what he wanted and never changed his mind or deviated in any way. I'm like, and that's beautiful fantasy, and it should totally count.
Yes.
And communicated it?
And then communicated it.
No!
No.
Oh my God. You might as well put dragons riding elves in there, because you're way out in the weird territory with that one.
That's right. So totally SIFWA. Maybe,
I also saw a lovely message from one of the BayCon organizers saying, please come to us.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very nice. But
I want to talk more about smut.
Okay. I wasn't really sure what we were going to be discussing, so I did come up with my, top 5 rules for how to write, that sort of thing. If that's
Let's do it. Okay. Yeah. Your top 5 for how to write smut or anything.
How to write a sex scene.
Beautiful.
Oh, baby,
Lay it on
top
us.
Please.
This is timely. I mean, just last week we were talking about sex scenes, good and bad, and our favorites. So we had an episode XXX. You see,
yes,
it would not have been right to not talk about sex scenes. So
this will be episode XXX +1.
Ooh,
so you'll be our +1.
Excellent, thank you. Considering that I write Menage books, that's very appropriate.
Magnificent.
Menage books.
Lay it on us.
Yes. So I came up with 5 rules of how to. Sorry. I came up with 5 rules, I can't read it from there, of how to not write a sex scene, how to write a sex scene, mistakes to avoid. And as I was a great admirer, by the way, of your show on cliches, which I found very, very appropriate.
Hoist a petard with the best of them, right?
That was marvelous. And so, although this is a great cliche in the world of writing, and everyone's heard it, and everybody rolls their eyes when they hear it, write what you know. Now, that's not necessarily so important when you're writing about, Martian space princesses, because not everybody's going to go, that's not like any Martian space princess I've ever met.
Fair.
But when you're writing about something as basic and human and natural as sex, about 90 to 95% of your readers are going to identify, and they're going to want to critique, maybe. And so if you aren't writing from a position of understanding of the human anatomy and what it needs to do and where things need to go.
So you're saying don't grab them by the cervix.
Oh my God, yes.
Ugh.
That was,
yeah.
We have to belabor that point because from the last one, there's a book out there called Belinda Blinked by a 60-year-old man for his first book decided to write porno. And there was a scene where he grabbed her by the cervix. which showed a shocking lack of understanding of the human anatomy to start with, and he was just looking for yet another euphemism. So, yeah, writing what you know, excellent. And although Dejah Thoris is a Martian space princess out there, and we respect that she had a lot of sex, as near as I can tell.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
absolutely.
Only she can know how to write. Yeah. Rule number 2, lay it on us.
Natural language. Natural language. Again, avoiding the cliches. In romance writing, I think the era of purple prose is over. I really, really do.
Oh, thank God.
I really think that the throbbing lance of manhood and the flowering core of femininity no longer need to grace the pages of our novels.
From your mouth to this microphone to the ears of anybody, oh, please.
Really, your publisher is going to tell you whether or not you need to use euphemisms or whether you can drop a C-bomb with the best of them.
Is that cunt or cock?
Both, I would say. Either one. I would say they're both C-bombs.
Fair enough.
Good to know.
But you really, really don't need to dress it all up in lovely language and call things rosebuds.
Oh, good.
Yeah. There are lots of ways of just using perfectly normal, natural speech that will allow you to avoid the F-bombs and the C-bombs if you don't want to use them, or if your publisher doesn't allow them. And you can work around that and not have to get all up in,
I agree. As far as the natural, I want to read something that flows more naturally. There's something that used to throw me out of them, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it till people stop. I don't usually have my partner use my name 10 or more times while we make love.
I agree.
It's a little creepy.
I agree.
I mean, at the end of it, I love you, Jeannie. I love you, Violet. That I could see that because that's affirming, but not all the way through it. So come on, I haven't forgotten my name partway through the scene.
Yeah, and you start to wonder if he has or she has.
Oh, dear.
Maybe. And then you get really concerned and
Sweetie?
you kind of slip out of that.
Darling? Yes.
Yeah. Need to stay in your nice, happy headspace there, or you get into all kinds of trouble. The most important thing, I think, is rule number 3, and that's incorporating all of your senses. You're not just touching things, you're smelling things, you're seeing things, you're feeling things, you're hearing things, you're tasting things if you're doing it right. And the...
I'm sorry. I now desperately want to read the abortive porn of the girl that, has this man who's a habitual smoker and takes her to bed. And then she just says, I'm sorry, your skin tastes terrible. And then he goes down on her and then she tries to go down on him and they're like, oh God, no. And it dribbles out because it tastes so bad. Dear smokers, this is what you taste and smell like.
Stop.
To non-smokers. No.
Okay.
But all the senses
All the senses are important.
Yeah.
They're all important. And you really can't... The era of romance writing where the woman just lays there and then the world explodes and then she wakes up the next morning, I think is also over.
Oh, good.
I really, really do.
There was that era?
Absolutely. When you're talking about the Kathleen Woodiwiss era, the Bertrand Small and Rosemary Rogers, and they basically just lay there and stuff happens to them and the universe expands and little stars appear and there's all kinds of ellipses everywhere and then the next morning they wake up. And it's just really, I kind of want to use the word unsatisfying. I don't know if that's too trite.
I like it. I like it because, it's like, even if we were willing to admit that happened under those circumstances, which many of us doubt, you're skipping the fun for the girls, which is what about the cuddling? What about that closeness? What about that feeling of intimacy that you get when you're all sweaty and lying there and trying to decide, I want to put off that bathroom run because I'm really enjoying cuddling with you so much.
Yeah, there really
all the senses is what I'm hearing over
all
here.
the senses. Yes. And it's true. You're absolutely right. They robbed us for years of
autonomy,
the aftermath.
agency.
Yeah.
You really have no agency when you're in that situation where, the pirate captain is ravishing you and you're madly in love with him, but you can't tell him. And, it's.
And you wake up the next morning after the galaxies collide.
Yes.
So we've had the rule ménage à trois. Mm-hmm. What is the rule?
Ménage à quatre.
Yeah, double couple.
Understand your main character's motivations. There is, and I actually recently listened to an interview with another romance author who was talking about this very same thing. When you're writing something like Intrigue, where, there's probably a masked gunman out there somewhere chasing you, and you just arbitrarily decide now is a really good time to roll over and start humping. There's a kind of an unnaturalness to that. And
I would think you would roll them on you and start humping body shield. But anyway.
There needs to be some kind of motivation. There needs to be a reason, even if it's just that whole, we have experienced fear and death and now we're suddenly blazingly horny reflex, which is a total human natural reflex.
And it's beautiful.
Oh, yes.
I was going to say that rule combines really well with your, I think it was rule 2, use natural language.
Yes.
Because it's very hard for some of us to get through a book where she's saying, no, I don't know you. I don't trust you. Come with me. Okay.
Exactly.
Wait, how did we...
If it's clear that the motivation is my editor told me to stick a sex scene in here, your readers are going to pick up on that. It's
Do editors say that?
I've had editors who've said, you need to put more action in this section of the book. Yes. I've had editors who've said, you need to do more scenes from his point of view and less from hers. It's, they say stuff like that.
Okay, well, I want to hear the next rule because I suddenly have a question about,
The next rule is actually more about dealing with sending in submissions, and that is learn to read and follow directions.
Learn to submit properly. Oh, wait, sorry.
Well, no, because most publishers, especially in this genre, the publishers are going to have a very explicit list of how to do things on their website. And, it's usually under a big tab called Come Write For Us. It's right there. And they're going to say things like 30,000 or more words. They're going to say things like, this is how you can use a Word document, but not a something else document. They're going to say, these are the margins, these are the spacing. Pay attention to that because they're trying to help you. And to me, that was really, really important. I actually read and copied and went through the list multiple times before I sent in my first book.
That makes a lot of sense, really.
And a lot of people don't. It's shocking how many people don't do that. Because my work is special and my book is special and they're going to read it and they're going to fall in love with it. And I hope they do, but I hope that's because you followed the directions and titled it properly so it didn't end up in somebody's spam folder.
Yes.
And really, that's about all I've come up with. I've only, been doing this for a couple of years, so I'm really new at this.
But you are a published author.
Yes.
We're using your nom de plume.
Yes, but I'm not presuming how to tell experts on how to do things they're experts on. I'm simply putting this out there.
This is important. This is the barrier to entry for many people is just getting these basics correctly.
Yes.
And I think they combine nicely into a whole of writing, of rules. I call it the first 4 is writing the scene, and the 5th is don't shoot yourself in the foot on the way out.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you could sum it up that way nicely. Thank you.
Because the naturalness of it matters, and the motivation of it matters, mm-hmm. and I like the notion of saying what is Violet's goal in all of this. Okay, Violet likes the guy. Does she curious about sex and always wanted to have some? Is she cruising to get married? Is Violet trying to become a romance novelist and feels like she really needs to experience sex a few hundred times so that she can write it properly?
Is Violet trying to convert him from his obvious hot gayness?
Is he just research material to her? All of these become interesting ways of...
Oh, baby, bookmark me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, knowing where you're going is really important to me. And I know everybody writes differently, but this is how I do it.
I have to say that as a set of rules, these are, I would expand them away from romance into everything, with the exception of some poetry where some writing you're intending to be florid. If I'm writing a diatribe of an 1880s gentleman against carnations, for instance, we are going to get florid and flowery language.
Yes.
But that's their natural language. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was saying, I especially love your idea that purple prose may be out of order. So the really long, complex sentences that last a paragraph or more, I'm just as pleased that those have gone away.
I certainly hope they have.
Although you have a little bit of Jane Austen in my heart still, and she had some kind of long sentences.
She really did, and I do admire her for that. The entire Bronte universe was very big on that as well, and I love those, but you can kind of get lost in them, and it's hard to keep in your head what's going on if you're getting lost in the prose.
But it's better than some of the Sam Spade that, I grabbed my gun, I looked to the window, a car was outside. And the only time he got long is if you ever read them where he starts talking about a girl, then suddenly he's got all the words in the world to say. So the inconsistency is what kept me from reading it. So consistency sounds like part of your rules are consistency all the way through.
Variety is the spice of life.
It
indeed.
is.
But, and no one's going to read a chapter of sentences that are 5 words long.
That is true.
But I also think it's going to be hard to read a chapter of sentences that are 200 words long.
Now, you briefly mentioned that your editor had said, we want things from his point of view, from her point of view. Mm-hmm. Are you saying that these days you don't do a novel entirely from the girl's point of view or entirely from the boy's point of view?
You absolutely do not, because contemporary romances, they want both points of view. It was a big thing back in the 70s and before, especially with the cruel heroes that people like Violet Winspear would write. They wanted you to have to guess at what the hero's thoughts and motivations were. And the plot that was driving the book was that the girl had no idea what was going on. It was kind of like the old Gothics, where, everything was confusing and everybody knew what was going on except her. And, she's the only point of view in the whole entire book. And you get to wait until that last half page of the book before he finally says, well, actually, I'm the real count and I had to hide this from you and I'm sorry, but I love you and everything's going to be okay. And then everything's magically okay. Mm-hmm. I hated that. I hated that.
The general lack of agency, as you were saying before.
Complete lack of agency, yes. And that was really, really popular in that 60s and 70s era of romance noveling. And I think we started to come out of that in the 80s. We started to get more of the hero's point of view, more of the, and I like that trend very much because it's hard to imagine these two people falling in love if you don't know why.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
When I write from a male point of view, sooner or later I turn to a few of my male friends and say, all right, John, is this believable? Do you believe this is a guy? Because I have often found when guys write girls, they miss things entirely.
Oh, so true.
And so do you ever go and say, can you take a look at this and see if this sounds reasonable to do a guy, or do you just kind of go with it?
I am very fortunate in that I have a wonderful, wonderful partner who is very helpful and supportive on many, many levels of my writing. And that is a big part of what he does for me.
Excellent.
I will out of the blue say to him, honey, do you think a guy would do this? And he'll think about it for a minute and he might say, I wouldn't, but one of those guys I work with down at the lumberyard probably would.
But I know a guy. Well, and I suppose you can also go look for groups. Like if I was looking for what a certain kind of sensitive New Age guy would do, I have sensitive New Age guys I would ask.
Absolutely.
I have, if I want, old school, rigid Catholic upbringing, I have guys I can ask, Mm-hmm. So there's different...
And that can be very helpful.
I have to say, and this is perhaps not the comment needed, that in general, especially in a romance, women understand male characters better than men understand female characters. And that could be a debate for another time. Yeah. I'm just putting it out there. But generally, steely-eyed, square-jawed genie, you're more likely to get a regional, out-of-time, other country place wrong because you don't know it, rather than general guyness.
I found that my biggest flaw that was mentioned by more than one guy was when they said, your male is encountering a female. He is heterosexual. In this instance, as you've written him, he would check her out. Like, all females? They're like, yeah. I'm sorry, all females. I'm like, oh, okay.
That When Harry Met Sally conversation.
A little bit. So it was, I did not have enough checking, because my challenge is I did not describe my heroines particularly, because what's the point? And it made me do that. If I'm going to have a male point of view, he's going to know what she looks like.
It's funny you mentioned that, because in at least one of my pieces, I've managed to work in the dreaded how to describe my heroine by using that exact setup.
Tell me about it.
It's actually not something I've put out. It's something that I'm having scruples about putting out, so I haven't sold it yet. But there's a scene where she's in a restaurant and he sees her from behind, and he's describing what she looks like because he gets up and walks past to go to the loo just to get a good look. And that's how I work the description in. And it actually worked really well, because I have him thinking about how he's reacting to her, and then I have him thinking about, hey, that's not appropriate. I probably should, just behave
So he's
myself.
a snag.
Excuse me?
He's
sensitive new age guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent.
Okay.
We'd like more of them.
Because the lumberyard guys would just be bringing wood.
So do you have any, in terms of final advice for new writers of romance, any final encouraging words you want to throw at them?
Oh, gosh. Honestly, the best 2 pieces of advice I ever received, I got out of an old Writer's Digest. And they were read and write.
Read the romance novels and then...
Read what's selling, read what's on trend, and then start writing.
The trends is huge. We did another episode earlier where we talked to agents that there are trends, so it's good to know what they are.
It is absolutely true.
All right. We're going to put links to Violet's stories and other authors mentioned and interesting things on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter. We answer email and we forward it to our guests. If you want to ask Violet a question, we will be glad to pass that on. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is David Welsh. John Schmidt is also learning how to be a sound engineer. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Langberg. You can hear more from Michael Langberg on manyhatsmusic.com. We don't have a podcast sponsor right now except for the Bean Scene, so we highly recommend that you all head to Murphy Street in Sunnyvale and drink a lot of coffee. Tell Kenny we sent you.